Thank you all for turning up. I really appreciate your time and coming to join me on, well, it's not my first book, but it is my first book launch. And I'll tell you, I'm a bit nervous and excited at the same time. In the past, I did publish books, but never did a book launch. And I thought this would be interesting to have a go on Zoom. So a bit of my journey and how I got into writing. And the thing is that I always loved writing as a child, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old. I had these incredible dreams. Every night I'd have such vivid, imaginative dreams. And I'd wake up in the morning and like, wow, I've got to write that down. So I had this book by my bed and I'd write down in brief my dream, some fantastic stories in there. I actually still have those books. And and that was great. But the interesting thing is that I actually didn't know how to write. And when I say I didn't know how to write, I could not read or write in English. I could speak English, but couldn't write it, couldn't read it. And I went to a very religious Jewish school that taught everything in Hebrew and in Yiddish. So you may be familiar, Yiddish is an old German dialect, but they never taught us how to write. So I could kind of speak it, but couldn't write anything. So I would write English transliterated using Hebrew characters. That's all I knew how to write. So when I go back and I read these dream books, it's quite fascinating. I'm trying to figure out what did I write? But again, I'm writing English phonetically with Hebrew letters. So it's quite a journey. And it wasn't until I was about 12 years old, I went to a new school and actually began to learn how to read and write. I went in at year 6, grade 6, depending on where you are in the world, and they put me in grade 3 because it was that was my level. I mean, barely if, and I was seriously learning ABC, and I was 12 years old in year 3, and I probably needed to go really into year 1, but it was a bit just too embarrassing. They didn't put me there. So I'm learning how to read and learning how to write and absolutely loving it. And now I can begin to write cat and hat and bat and sat. And that was the journey. And just loved it and really kept writing so much that when I was in Scouts, we went to a jamboree, and this is the U.S. Jamboree. About 40,000 Scouts went there, and pretty amazing. And I decided I was going to enter a writing competition. Now, considering I didn't really, I can barely spell my name. It was quite a feat. And this is before the multiple spell checks on computers today. And we have all this technology to help. And I wrote an article for the writing competition at the Scouting Jamboree with 40,000 people. And interesting enough, I actually still have it. Here it is. Okay, so here is the article, and here was the submission. And this was all about my experience in scouting. And you think it won? It did win. That was because my scoutmaster probably spent more time editing it than I did writing it. Every second word needed correction. But I've kept that to remind me of the journey of where I've traveled with my writing. So yeah, certainly didn't start off gifted in writing, and so much so through high school. Now, I had a high school teacher. Now, in my school, I actually had the same English teacher from year 7, 8, 9, 10 through 11. Okay, because it was a very small school, and we had the same teachers for everything. Now, what's interesting is this was Mr. Silver. Of course, I remember his name. I had him for 5 years. He didn't like my writing. And that was because he just didn't like my style and the adventure stories, the fantasy, and the kind of stuff I would write. So I didn't do very well in Mr. Silver's class. Never mind my spelling. I still remember in year 11, I was still spelling I apostrophe M-E, and he corrected it. I was like, oh, I thought I is like saying me, but just I'm together. So it's me, it's just an I and apostrophe. That's how bad I was writing. And it really kind of killed the dream. As much as I loved this writing, but I wasn't doing very well. I certainly didn't win any awards in high school for writing or barely passed English. Did do well in chemistry and science and physics. So I finish high school and I go traveling through Europe. I'm 17 years old, traveling Europe, the Middle East, and I've got all these stories I want to share, right? I'm in Prague and I was in Paris, I was in Geneva, I was in Jerusalem, and all over the place. Oh, in Venice. And I'm like, I've got to share these stories. And I'm like, but Ben, you don't know how to write. You can't share these stories. So I said, I better learn how to write. And I started applying myself and working. I said, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out how to spell and grammar and punctuation. And I tried really, really hard. And that's kind of the journey. And I started writing. I wrote these articles and got some published in magazines and in newspapers. And I was before travel blogging. But it was great to see every time I got another little thing about writing, there was another little win in there. And it encouraged me to keep going. Does this resonate with anyone as a writer or like the journey through writing? Or everyone knew how to spell and everyone had a most people did. Yeah. But I'm 25 and I have my quarter life crisis, or we'll call it a quarter life awakening. And I'm living in Sydney at the time, doing well, working, have a nice car, a nice apartment, a pet goldfish. And I decide I'm going to go travel the world. So I make a 5-year travel the world plan. I'm going to go see the entire world, living out of a backpack. And I get rid of everything, sell everything, donate my clothes to charity, give the goldfish to the little girl downstairs, and head on out into the world for a big adventure. And what do you think happened? Well, I start traveling and I'm thinking, wow, I've got all these stories I have to share. Same thing. I've got to share. I want to write newspapers, magazines. I want to write a travel book. I'm like, Ben, you don't know how to write. You can barely spell your name. And I kid you not, I have 2 passports from 2 different countries, and my name is misspelled in one of the passports, which creates quite a headache on plane tickets, as you could imagine. But no joke, it's actually spelled different in 2 different passports. So I'm like 25. I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to write. And and I start writing for newspapers and magazines and submitting articles. And sure enough, I get a weekly column in a newspaper on travel. And then I get a column on business and travel. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. This is great. Never mind, I'd had like 10 people edit just to make sure everything was okay. So that was the journey. And then I started writing a few books and published a few books, some self-published, some with publishers. And it's really been a fantastic journey to learn how to write and to share my writing. And that was going all good for the 5 years, 6 years of travel. And then, unfortunately, I had some challenges and got into some legal issues. And I spent the next several years writing affidavits for court. I still remember one court affidavit was 42,000 words. It was a book. And while I felt great, I wrote this amazing document. I'm like, nobody's going to read it. I could be writing stuff that's really going to help people. And I got like I kind of got awards for my affidavits, compliments from lawyers and barristers and judges, and it was fantastic. I'm writing fantastic affidavits, the best they've ever seen. But I'm like, I really want to get back to my core, and that is sharing uh, stuff about spirituality, about personal development, things that can help people really live a more fulfilled and rich life. And a few years ago, I came back to that. Especially, I had a close friend who died suddenly, young, and it hit me to realize that this that could have been me. That was one day he was here, and the next day he was gone. And I'm like, well, what? I've really got to get my act together and start writing the stuff that's really worth sharing. And I thought about, I have two young boys. What would I want to share with them that's really meaningful? Of course, I tell them to do their homework and make their bed and help with the dishes and look both ways before crossing the street. But what's really, really important for life that's just timeless? And so I had this idea I was going to write 40 years of wisdom in 40 days. And then I played around with the title a bit. It was going to be based on 40 chapters in life. And the book I'm launching today is that book. The idea is it is everything I feel. I've collected this wisdom from traveling the world to over 75 countries, meeting incredible people from all walks of life, going through challenges, learning from them and my own journey, and condensing it into what is really, really important. And that's this book, The Life You Will Live, focusing on what matters most. And it's based around 5 areas of life I've learned in my coaching practice that I've been doing for the last decade of what are the real things that are important in our life. And these areas around mindset, emotions, health, finance, and relationships. Those are the core areas that I think are timely to our human experience. So that's what it is. There's 40 chapters in the book based on those 5 areas. Short chapters, but very, very powerful. Okay. And I thought maybe I'd share a bit, read a few little excerpts from some of the chapters. Is that okay? You're all still with me? Get a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's read a bit from some of these chapters. I mean, it was so difficult deciding what to read when every chapter is so powerful. And really, I can read from anywhere in the book, but I took a few places that I thought would resonate with most. And this is the part of the introduction. I'm not going to read the whole chapter of each one, but I'll read little parts from the chapter. So, the life you will live. The day you were born, the world changed. It was decided that of the estimated 350,000 babies born every day, you were going to be one of them. You were born to the exact parents in the exact place and at the exact time you were meant to be. You had no say in the matter. Had you been given an opportunity to put in a request for what family, location, and circumstance, along with what physical, mental, and emotional features you were going to be dealt with, you may have asked for something more, less, or different. But your life is a gift. And when you receive a gift, all you can say is thank you. When you receive a gift, sometimes you know what to do with it. And at times, you are left wondering what the giver was thinking. I think we've all gotten a gift like that sometime. Everyone, you got a gift going, what in the world is this thing? Like, what am I supposed to do with it? What were they thinking? So you may have figured out what to do with your gift of life, or maybe you haven't. Either way, there's a clock ticking. And at some point, you will need to return the gift. You cannot hold on to it forever. So that is part of the introduction. And now I want to read something from another introduction, and this is on mindset. And that's a heading from one of the sections. Mindset. Everything begins and ends with your mindset. The quality of the life you live will be reflected in the quality of your thinking. You can have everything and be miserable thinking you have nothing, or you can have nothing and be happy thinking you have everything. You can see everything that happens to you as a gift or a punishment from your idea of God. This may give you a reason to celebrate or change. Or you can see everything that happens to you as a stroke of good or bad luck and then deal with your resulting emotions. With your mindset, you will create your reality through your thoughts, which will influence your actions. This means whether you believe you can or you cannot, you are right. You will also never outperform your perception of yourself, whatever this perception may be. If you want to live an incredible and inspired life, start by freeing your mind and taking control of how you think. You cannot always control what happens to and around you and or the limitations placed on your situation, but you can always control your mindset, your interpretation of events, and what you believe. This is the only guaranteed freedom you have to truly be you. Your thoughts are ultimately reflected in your speech and actions, which set you on a path of who you are becoming. The ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, "Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny." Wow, very powerful words. And when I originally wrote this book, I actually wrote it unpersonally, like it was people may think, or a person should, or he should, or they should. And when I went back through it, I thought, how could I make it really more personal? And that's why I changed everything to you. No, I don't want to sound like I'm lecturing or giving a sermon or telling people what to do, but I thought with the you, it would make it a lot more personal. Does that resonate with people? It does. Thank you. Thanks for nodding. And if you have your screen off, you could also drop stuff into the comments as well. So that was on mindset. And the next chapter is on, I've got to find it. Let's find it here. Here we go. Oh boy. Now, almost there. Okay. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Here it is. So this chapter is called Now. Some people only start living when they find out they are going to die. As the American naturalist Henry David Thoreau put it, "Oh, to reach the point of death and realize one has not lived at all." The terminally ill and those advanced in age may wake in the morning thinking, "Today may be my last." The rest of us think we will keep on living, yet none of us can guarantee we will be here tomorrow. In nature, there is only now. Tomorrow's sunrise and sunset will look different than today's. The river you see in this moment is gone in the next. The flowers and trees are transforming before your eyes. Every single cell in your body is changing right now. The person you can be today is not the person you were yesterday or the person you will be tomorrow. So very powerful to remember that, and that we're really living in the present. And that's a whole chapter on now, and I'm skipping a bit into it. You may live as if you have all the time in the world, but you don't. You might reach a ripe old age, but life can end at any moment. A classmate of mine had a heart attack at the age of 19 and was gone in a minute. A friend's sister died at 23 from a brain tumor. 1 week she was fine, and the next week she was deceased. On my street, the mother of a 2-year-old boy passed away while taking a morning shower. When a double semi-trailer nearly smashed into the back of me, I woke up to life. My car was in the middle of a lane, stopped at a red light, but the truck behind me wasn't stopping. There was a car to my left. Thankfully, the lane to my right was empty. The truck managed to shift in a moment as it sped towards me, missing me by inches. I believe in miracles, and a miracle saved me. When the light turned green, I pulled over. I sat and reflected on my life. It had almost just ended. Had there been a vehicle to my right, the truck would have gone through me. I still have flashbacks to the moment. So I was somewhere in Sydney and I still drive past that spot quite regularly, and I reflect on my gratitude. I drive through there almost every second day, and this was, 20 years ago. So very, very vivid of just in that second of the truck nearly plowing through me. Okay, so that was a chapter on that. I've got a few more short parts of chapters to share. And this next one is under emotions. So this is the category about emotions. Emotions. It is human to feel and express emotions. Positive and negative emotions, if we may label them, are built into your system. It is not always in your control how much you may feel an emotion. It is, though, up to you how you choose to express it. While most of your emotional responses will come in relation to other people's behavior, you also have emotional reactions concerning your own conduct. When you achieve some perceived positive goal that supports your belief and values, or you do something you perceive to be negative that goes against your values, you will feel some emotion. This feeling is present because you have a story in your head. If you change your story or belief, you will change your emotional response. Your emotional responses, be they perceived as a positive or a negative, come from beliefs around how things should and should not be. No one ever makes you angry, sad, or frustrated. Only you can do this to yourself through the story you tell yourself. It is seldom the action that has occurred that triggers the emotion. It is the reason you believe to be behind the action. And I talk a lot about emotions there. And how do I know a lot of this stuff? Yeah, there's experience from all the travel I've done, but I've always been a big reader. And at any point, I probably have about 50 books out from the library, and that's not an exaggeration in any shape or form. I'm usually reading a dozen books in one go. I just put a few books over there because it looks good in the background, but if you saw what was behind, I go through books uh, in a couple of days. I read through a book, speed reading, getting the information, and I really love reading. So I've read so much and gained all this information and a bit of, and which I put into the book. And to finish off with one last reading, there is a section on being. They all have short titles. The Minimalist Approach. Here we go. Oh, my it has disappeared. Here we go. Okay. Sorry for that. And this is about being. Now, being is a chapter, and here we go. Being. And this is the last part I will read. The most amazing thing that has ever happened to you, that is happening to you right now, and that will ever happen to you in the future is that you exist. God has given you, gives you, and will continue giving you life. Anything else around you pales in comparison. But like your breathing, the fact that you are living runs automatically in the background. You forget that you are alive. You get busy doing, and you forget you are being. Remember that you are a human being, not a human doing. True, you are here to do. However, you are also here to be. God wants you to enjoy life and the world you live in. Your body is filled with pleasure sensors, enabling it to perceive and experience the exquisiteness of the magnificent universe. You are surrounded by natural beauty, from sunsets, flowers, mountains, animals, and humans. There's beauty everywhere, from the grand vistas of the mountain range to the teeny snowflake. There's beauty in smell, fresh bread, spices, flowers, the ocean, and perfumes. There's beauty in sound, birds chirping, babies laughing, children playing, and voices singing. There's beauty in touch, silk, velvet, skin to skin, and water trickling down your body. There's even beauty in silence, stillness, darkness, and emptiness. Why is this? Because these in themselves are creations built out of love. Darkness is not the absence of light, it is a creation in itself. The same can be said for silence, stillness, and emptiness. And that is part of the chapter on being. So yeah, that's a bit on a bit about read from the book. And it's interesting that writing, I guess, runs in my family. I've got two publications from my mother. She used to write when I was a kid. And these are two of her books. On the back there is a book my dad wrote. That one I'm still figuring out. And my grandmother wrote a lot too. And I still have the stacks of letters we used to write when I moved to Australia 25 years ago. Grandma was in Canada and we used to write every week. I've kept these letters. And of course, she would tell me off for my spelling and my grammar and punctuation and everything, but that's that's okay. And I've kept that stuff because that's really important, even though I have minimalist, I don't have many possessions, but these things are important to me. So that's a bit, that's what I really wanted to share. And I'd like to open it now for any questions for a few minutes if anyone would like to ask something about my writing or journey or about the book.
Ben, Stella here.
Hi,
Yeah, in the very beginning, you were saying that when you're given a gift, somehow you have to return the gift. I don't know. I'm taking it literally. Like if you give me a T-shirt, somehow I have to return the T-shirt. So what does it mean?
Thank you, Estella. So this is the gift of life that we've each been given. It's kind of on loan. So whatever idea of God, nature, the infinite, supreme, has given us this gift of life, right? And sometimes we forget that it's a gift that we do need to return at some point. That means the life, we're going to give it back. We don't hold on to it forever. And I know, like, I once borrowed some tools from a friend, and I know I had to give them back. So I'm like, I better fix everything, right? I've got to fix everything around the place because I've got to give them back to him. And like, if we borrow a car and think, oh, I've got to give it back, we're going to make the most of it, run all our errands. So that's the idea of the gift of life. But it's also unpacking it to really figuring
Okay.
out what it is. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hey, Hoodie, welcome. That's my brother in Canada. I could say good evening. Thanks for joining. I think we have someone else. There's Neil, uh, who doesn't have a camera on, but I think Neil read. He was the first to read this book. If this is the Neil I think it is. I sent him a copy a few years back. It was a rough draft, and he read that. And if it is him, he encouraged, said, "This is really good stuff. You've got to get it out there and share it and fix it up." Yeah. So any questions?
And back to your previous point about like I took the last question to mean more like paying it forward rather than giving it back. But I do see what you mean about like essentially your time is limited, so like use it wisely and then your soul is given back. But I was seeing it also as like paying it forwards. right? It kind of sounded like you were talking about the concept of paying it forwards, where somebody, back to the t-shirt idea, if somebody gives you a t-shirt, like, remember that somebody gave you that t-shirt, so it's making you feel good, so let me go make somebody else feel good. And whether that means buying them a t-shirt or buying them a pair of socks or whatever, then do that at some point.
Well, yes, thank you. I like that. And there is a lot about in the book about service and how we kind of do that, pay it forward, and how we're meant to. In one of the chapters I speak about, my way of understanding life is finding a balance between selfishness and selflessness. And it's kind of a balance. It's like if we're given an example I have is imagine someone left this big, beautiful mansion for you to stay in. And it's got a pool and a jacuzzi and a tennis court and a beautiful kitchen, all the great stuff. And you spend a year there and they come back afterwards and they're like, oh, how'd it go? And everything's spotless and you're just living in one room. You say, oh, I didn't go in the garden. I didn't use the pool. I didn't want to do anything there. Well, they say, like, why'd you do that? Of course, you should have used it, right? It's there for us to use and enjoy, but also be mindful and tend to it. So to take care of it. And for me, that's we could enjoy the world and everything that we've been gifted, but we also need to be mindful in sharing it and cultivating it and making the world a better place. Yeah. Okay.
So Ben, how do we get hold of your book?
Thank you, Estella. Waiting for that question. So on Amazon now, you can see here, that's the Amazon. So it's on Kindle. If you do have a Kindle or you have a Kindle app or a Kindle, you can get it on Kindle and digital. It's working well. Now there is a print version as well, print on demand. It looks like it's all good. I haven't tested it. It should have launched today, so you can order that as well. The prices are very cheap. It's like $5 or something, $6. It's all at a minimum for the next few days or so. So I want to encourage people to get on there and get it. If you go to Amazon, whether it's .com or .au, and type in the title of the book, The Life You Will Live, along with maybe my last name, Tanny, 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 The Life You Will Live, that should come up. Do you have it? Oh, thank you, Fiona.